In this tutorial, we're going to walk you through how to use the Puppet tool and how to access some of the other features that are associated with it. If you take a look at my application window, you can see that I have a composition called Clown. It's open up down here in my timeline, and you can see I have a pale yellow background and then a Photoshop file of our little clown out here, designed specifically for this exercise so that we can move him the way that we want to. And basically what the Puppet Pin tool does is it allows you to take still pictures or objects that you've created inside a program like Illustrator or Photoshop and add a basic two-dimensional animation to them. So the Puppet Pin tool is located at the end of the tool window here, and I'm going to give our clown guy here a couple of different positions for our connector. When I've got a figure like this, you kind of want to think about how would the figure move if he had an internal bone structure. So I can put a pin here and here as if on his shoulders, one in the center of his torso, one in the lower torso. I'm going to just push one out here to the ankle on each. We'll keep him kind of straight-legged, and then we'll do the same for our hands and center of the nose. And so now, if I move over one of these points, I can click and drag, and you can see that I can move the object's individual pieces kind of back and forth. And again, this is with the Puppet tool selected. I can click and drag. Got a little bit of the exterior edge there. And if I click on this parameter up here, you can see Mesh and Show. And so you can see that what After Effects has done is, as I have added individual points here, it has attached a mesh to my object. And that means that it can kind of treat it as if it's in a different kind of presence in space. So instead of it treating things as sort of one whole, it's divided the object up into these individual triangles in the mesh. And you can see that we've got some control over the number of triangles. So we can shrink them down or increase them, and you'll do this when you want to change the sensitivity of how things are working. So the more triangles, the more kind of finesse you might be able to get, but sometimes you don't really need need that kind of finesse. And you also have to kind of accept the limitations of this. You see we also have a expansion value, and if I expand it out a little bit, you'll see that now if I move this little mitt over here, we're not leaving that black piece behind. If I drop it back down to 3, where we were before, you can see there's a little black edge that's here. So basically the expansion is allowing us to kind of puff out the mesh so that all aspects are actually included. So now if I just again play with some of the movement here and think about where we want our clown to start from. Now I drew him with the legs kind of spread out a little bit because I wanted that kind of separation. But now when we start, and here we have the playhead at the beginning of the timeline, this is the position that I want to start from. We can think about how we want this to move over time. If you're familiar with keyframing, then this will start to make sense to you. If you're not familiar with keyframing, we'll have another tutorial up so that you can see what's going on. But basically, the keyframes are automatically activated at the beginning, so that if I go to the 2-second mark, and I come up with my pin tool, and I lift his leg, and lift his leg, and lift his hand, and lift his hand, and push his head kind of over to the side. And I press the space bar, it will give you a slow version at first of our little clown jumping in the air. But if we go forward a little bit and think about another way that we can work with these kinds of tools, if I want to set a recording so that it kind of happens automatically, I can come back into my my tool, and if I hold down on the Command key while I am moving an object, the playhead will move forward in time, and it will actually be recording keyframes from the movement that I'm initiating. So we'll do that now. You can see the clock came up, and the playhead's moving down, and there we go. And you can see that it adds a lot of keyframes by comparison here. And again, not playing in real time, but showing us the changes as we move. We do have some recording options. We can click here, and you can see that the speed is at 100%. So if you want to change the properties of your animation and have it play at 50%, you'll start to see some differences in the way that the points are recorded. The smoothing value, and you'll see the number of keyframes increase as the smoothing goes down. So let's change this to 50, and let's change this to 2, and click OK. And we'll come back here to the beginning, and now I'll come up here and we'll animate this property here. I'm going to hold down, and you can see the little clock that pops up, and that means that we're going to be recording our movement over time, and the playhead will start to move as soon as I click with my mouse to move it. And you can see that the foot is moving there at the same time. And if I go up and down, you can see that we have a lot of keyframes because that smoothing value was down. And so by changing that 50%, or changing the speed value from 100 to 50%, you can see that we get a lot more movement because the playhead is moving at 50% of its normal speed. So you can see kind of what's happening there. So some different things to play with. So if we come back here, and we've got our sort of like jumping up and down happening. If I want to use the starch tool, if I click on this, and we'll show the mesh. Now what I can make happen is I can prevent distortion in some of the objects as I'm moving them. So let's keep this leg from being distorted here. Okay. So it's a little bit difficult to see, but what I want you to look at is the way that this is starting to scoop out and this is staying rigid. So the starch tool is basically a way of freezing those mesh triangles so that the animation that you're adding to other portions of the design are not affecting those pieces. So sometimes you don't need to add as many as what I did. It depends on what it is that you're doing, but just to make sure to show you, that's how that works. And again, that overlap tool, if I know that let's see, if I know that we want, and again we'll turn on that mesh, if I know we want the hair to always be on top, we'll add that there. We'll go forward to that keyframe where it's up there. We'll drag this puppet pin tool and we'll move him up this way. So we'll change this here and come back here. And so you can see when I move this over, that hair stays in front. If I move it too far, you can see that the mitt starts to come through the hair. So we'll just show you how that happens because I didn't push the overlap fully into the hair and the head, but there we go. So use the overlap tool on whatever you want to be on top in terms of the design.